Hey neighbor, welcome back to Year-End List Season right here on ARTV. My name is John and 2019 was an electrifying year for music. I feel that we were flooded with great album releases in addition to singles and EPs. A nice year all around, in fact probably one of my favorites of the decade. So closing out on a good note is always a positive thing. Now, I mentioned this being a great year for music all around. If you didn't see my best songs of 2019 list, it was a top 50, then there's a card on screen to go check that out, because of course I love albums, but also it goes beyond that. Now, this video, of course, is dedicated to my top 20 best albums of 2019. It's one that I always stress over and lament the decisions, all of the placements, because I want to make sure it's accurate to how I'm actually feeling. And this year proved to be extremely tough for me. And with there being so many great releases, that also means that I had to cut some. So make sure you stay tuned to the end of the video. Just before my number one pick, I will reveal all of my honorable mentions. Other than that, before we get into this video, if you would consider supporting the channel on Patreon at the top link down below. We've been having a lot of copyright issues this year in list season, and with these album and song countdown videos, especially the best of, I feel that it's vital to play you guys a clip of this so that you get an idea of why I love this so much, a general feel for the music. Maybe you'll be interested in it. If you want to check out all of these songs, there is going to be a link down below to follow the Spotify playlist, because obviously the clips that I'm playing are very short today. There's going to be something that I've done for the first time ever. I put together an Essentials playlist. The Essentials tracks to really get you jump started to get into these records, and I'll break them down as we go from 20 all the way to 1. Let's get started. Drop a like on this video and subscribe if you're new.
Now listen, a picture's worth 1,000 words, a video worth 1,000,000, but no amount of likes can heal up all this pain that I'm feeling.
You might think that the number one position is the hardest for me to award each year, but in reality, it's actually the bottom couple of spots on my list, including on my best albums list, the number 20 position. It's the last spot before something gets delegated to being an honorable mention, which nothing against those records at all. We're gonna talk about some fantastic ones as you'll see later in this video, but also, I mean, it's the last one on the actual list, and today, nabbing that coveted 20 slot is rapper YBN Cordae with his debut solo album, The Lost Boy. This was certainly a lyrical exercise in many ways. So many great flows, a great guest list here, but make no mistake about it, YBN Cordae is the star of the show. This guy clearly has talent, and he actually has a lot of lyrical prowess that I can really appreciate. He has a lot of versatility as well. As I'm gonna do with each of the albums on the list today, I'm gonna highlight some of the essential tracks, not to say that these are the only good songs on the album for any of these records, but still, maybe start here and see if you like the full experience. I would highly recommend the banger Have Mercy, rattling trap percussion, also a hook that won't leave your head, and a lot of great flows here. Also, RNP featuring Anderson .Paak is a must. It was one of my personal top 50 best songs of the year. The trade flows and jabs throughout is incredible. Also, I highly recommend Family Matters with Aaron Ray, Wintertime that shows off that more conscious side of him and his hip-hop stylings, and 1,000 Words. I hope that you'll give this album a chance, because when I did, it really unlocked something in my mind. Rock had a really solid year in 2019, bouncing back from some of the woes of recent years. I think that young bands like Badflower were leading the charge with a real sense of purpose. There's definitely a big emotional range that this album hits. And OK I'm Sick is not the perfect record by any stretch of the phrase. In fact, I've come back down to earth with it just a bit. I don't love it like I did maybe on release week, but still, this is a fascinating listen to me because it is very familiar. In fact, it might be too familiar for some rock fans out there. But I think that Badflower channeled their influences in a way that does pay homage, but also adds some new tread to the tires, if you will, their own sense of spirit and personality. I love the guitars that drive some thundering drums, and Josh Katz is a fantastic frontman with a wide range of emotions. He's very open about what he shares. In terms of essentials, I'm gonna have to go with Ghost, because that was the single that really put them on the map, but listen with caution, definitely some heavy subject matter there. 24 is also one that really spoke to me, one of my favorite tracks of the year, a slow burn. I would would also recommend We're in Love. A slow one once again with some stuttered guitars, but once those yells really kick in, the more aggressive guitars, definitely a nice touch. Also recommend X Anna X, Do More Like This, Bad Flower, very explosive, and also Heroin. This is an album that I still continue to spin, and while again, it's not perfect, I think it's gonna be just enough to get that sweet spot for the rock fans.
So where did you go? I should know, but it's cold and I don't wanna be lonely, so tell me.
2019 was the year of Billie Eilish, to some people's dismay, and while 2017 and 2018 was certainly a rise and she was definitely surging in popularity, without a doubt, she conquered this year, and honestly, I'm excited to see what she conquers next. When We All Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? Her debut album lands at number 18 on my list, and I'm sure that's going to anger some people and trigger applause from others, but where I land on this entire situation is outside of the personality that has so many millions of followers online. What is the music? And Billie and her brother Phineas are producing some quality tunes. I love the fact that this album doesn't feel phoned in any way. In fact, you can tell that they put a lot of tender love and care into making the track list flow. So many standout cuts, from the singles to some of the deep ones that might not sit with some of the mainstream fans, but I'm certainly on board for it. Get weirder, Billie, and I'm so stoked to see what the future holds. If you're one of the few people that never got around to checking out this full-length album, then I highly recommend that you check out some of these essential tracks. ILuvMetal, or ILuvMetal, however you want to say that, is a very weird one. The kind of vibrato vocals that are stuttered and wavery in places. Also, the synthesizers, everything just feels very odd on this one. All the Good Girls Go to Hell with that driving bass line is definitely a key track. I Love You is incredibly poignant. The lyrics are so well penned, it's stunning. Also, Bad Guy is a great single, and even though it's overplayed, still one of the songs that makes this album work overall. And also, Zanny.
Wake up, remember, we are one breath.
Tool finally returned with the 10 Commandments after 13 unholy years away. The fans waited for so long, and Fear Inoculum delivered. At number 17, we've got the 5th studio album by Tool. And this was definitely something that had ungodly amounts of hype. I mean, after 13 years, expectations soar into the stratosphere. But somehow, Tool were able to strike back with something fierce, understated at times. Maynard James Keenan is not always the primary focus, nor has he ever been, but also he steps a little bit more into the shadows on this record, and that might anger some, but for me, it truly worked. I think that the jam band and also just kind of playing and melting out whatever they wanted to for the rest of the members really paid off in a major way for Tool. And also some of the lyrics on this record really seem striking to me. Obviously, Maynard has been building up a lot for the writing sessions for this, and the riffs, some of them have been existing since the 90s apparently, like Tempest for example, and then you've got stuff that just circles around like Pneuma that works incredibly well. And Danny Carey on the drums, absolute animal, a savage on this release, and I can't commend the band enough. Pulling from the track list for the essentials, I'm of course going to have to recommend the almost 16-minute long Tempest, which is a wild ride that is thrilling, electrifying, and angry. It's the payoff moment that we absolutely needed within the context of this record. I also highly recommend Pneuma, another one that I already mentioned, Culling Voices, Chocolate Chip Trip, because again, Danny fucking Carey, man. And also, we cannot go without mentioning the title track either. Fear Inoculum's finally here, and in my eyes, it certainly was not a letdown.
I see you reaching, baby. What are you reaching for? That don't look easy, baby.
Making its smooth entry at number 16 is Ventura by Anderson .Paak. This is such a wide-reaching scope that Anderson lays down on the album, an incredible step up after a letdown that came in the form of 2018's Oxnard, which was not a bad album, but still just nowhere near as great as some of his highs like Malibu, and again, now, Ventura. Anderson is so gifted musically. He plays a variety of different instruments, notably the drums, but he also sings, raps, brings out a lot of different collaborators, and those collaborations feel so natural. He also has a ton of chemistry with them, so they put in the time in the studio to actually make this worthwhile. Key tracks include Chosen One, which is always stuck in my head, Reachin' Too Much, which is definitely picking at someone, and I love that playful edge that it has, almost a little bit of a sarcastic twist. King James was a great single. I love the brass on that track. Also, Come Home featuring Andre 3000. I think a lot of you, if you haven't heard this record, are really going to be impressed with that guest verse. And also, Make It Better. I mean, just a Motown classic, a new modern classic with Smokey Robinson right there. Hot Take Cinema over here, but part 1 over part 2 any day, my friends. At number 15, we have Everything Not Saved Will Be Lost part 1 by the British band Foals. It's danceable but dark, it's bleak without ever feeling too hopeless. There's always a sentiment that spoke to me within this record, and I did hear that right away. I liked this album, but I also didn't necessarily think this would be a year-end contender. But the more we got into 2019, I could see some of the layered nuance and these danceable feelings with the tangible synth lines and also the great vocals from Yannis Philippakis. I just love that there is an energy there, but there's also a fuse being lit to the anger, and when those bombs go off, oh, these tracks are totally worth it. There's some slow burns, but hang in there and this album will speak to you. Moving over to the essential tracks, I highly recommend Sunday, the next to last track on the album. Just kind of a hopeful glimmer that you get with that one, a nice spirit about that track. Syrups is one that again builds up those synthesizers, some of the guitars. Once everything fully falls into place, you see exactly why it works so well. I highly recommend the single Exits as well. Whether you listen to the radio edit or the full version, I've really come around on listening to the full 6-minute version of the track on the Luna, Cafe to Athens. Really, you can't go wrong with most of these tracks at all. Number 14, Social Cues by Cage the Elephant. A divorce led to disaster in terms of conflicting emotions, but ultimately led to the diamond that we hear today in the form of course, this album, Social Cues. This record to me saw them returning to kind of a sharp songwriting style. Cage had fallen off just a bit, even though they are one of my favorite rock groups of the 2010s. I felt that Tell Me I'm Pretty was very underwhelming. This was personal, it was hard-hitting, it was gripping. And while not every single song is about divorce, we see the journey, we see trying to blow off smoke, we see letting go, we see this other side where you finally realized that maybe this lover is never coming back, maybe we've hit the point of no return, so goodbye. The track list is mapped out brilliantly. I love that they take you through this valley roller coaster ride through the highs and lows of the demise of a relationship, leading to that final gut stab that is goodbye. John Hill did a great job at producing Cage the Elephant here. I think a lot of the instrumentals feel very wiry, jittery, but also understated in other moments when it needs to be. There's always the right touch, it seems, depending on the mood of the track. Moving over to the essential tracks here, I have to praise the lead single, Ready to Let Go, very authentic to Cage. House of Glass, one that has a punk energy and spirit about it. Tokyo Smoke, I love the way that one just kind of plows through it. Social Cues has some great commentary in it. I love the hook, one of the best that Cage have ever made. Black Madonna is absolutely a key track, feeling very 70s-ish. And also Goodbye, I mentioned that being a gut stab, and good God, it absolutely is. It kind of haunts you as you go out on that note, and you're like, did I just witness the end of a relationship? And yes indeed, yes you did.
Running on a million people trying.
Natalie Marianne, aka Wise Blood, grabs the number 13 spot, which might feel unlucky to some of my viewers, but to me, this was one of the best musical discoveries I made in 2019. I was not previously familiar with Natalie's work, but her voice is angelic. I love that she blends together stylings of the 70s soft rock scene with her own unique persona. I love that there's chilling moments on this LP, both vocally and lyrically, ones that just kind of make you look at yourself and you're like, oh my God, that was, wow, where is the lie in that statement? There's a lot of introspection, there's a lot of melancholy, there's a lot of wallowing in a way, but also you kind of know that the grass is greener on the other side. That is the feeling that lingers with me on this album. So it's devastating in a way, but not always too sad. Poignant essentials from this LP include Mirror Forever, my personal favorite from the LP. I love the rise that one has. Also Andromeda, another major moment here that just kind of shook me in a major way. I felt that the title track Titanic Rising is one that I had to give a mention to. Also, Every Day, that song is catchy as hell. It reminds me of the Carpenters from the 70s, just that style, but her own unique blend as well. And also, A Lot's Gonna Change, because I don't feel that I could do this record justice without mentioning that one.
I felt afraid and ashamed, and I felt anything at all. I felt you panicking, just shattering your catastrophic fall.
Number 12 goes to La Dispute, a post-hardcore and spoken word band with their latest offering, Panorama. This is an emotionally throttling listen that tackles grief in a myriad of different ways. We see it play out as Jordan Dreyer and the rest of the band just kind of try to feel out the inspiration, approaching it from different angles. And each time they do this, it just feels impactful on some level. You're able to let that translate and fully envelop you. I think La Dispute have such an underrated knack for writing these songs that just put their hooks into you and drag you to the ground. They body slam you in places with things that you just wouldn't see or expect to come. Panorama features a musical atmosphere that seems to elevate the more time you're able to spend with it, and sometimes if you take a month off, say, and then come back to it again, I just feel that it grips that much harder, and I think that speaks volumes about the talents of each band member, what everybody brings to the table. And musically, this album feels like the perfect storm, the combination of, say, Wildlife and Rooms of the House, quiet and loud. This might be an acquired taste that's not for everyone that's watching this video, but I do hope that you'll give it a chance. Some of the essential tracks for me were View from Our Bedroom Window. This one definitely has a higher tempo and octane that feels a little bit more in your face, especially with that striking guitar tone. Fulton Street 1, no shade to Fulton Street 2, but that moment is unparalleled. Footsteps at the Pond definitely gives you a creeping feeling of suspense. Anxiety Panorama kind of encapsulates everything that this record is about. And also, that closing moment, You, Ascendant, makes this untouchable.
If I'm already out of time, then make it worse. Go on and hit me in the heart, hit me where it hurts.
Caroline's band Chairlift called it quits, but never fear. Her incredible solo album Pang is here, and at the number 11 position. Caroline worked with tons of different producers and co-writers for an experience that isn't dizzying or all over the place with results varying to many different degrees? What kind of sorcery is this? I love Caroline's voice and approach to writing songs. She's got a detailed palette that she pulls from, and with Pang, she's able to capture the sensation of falling in love and all of the joy and heartache that that experience can bring. Throughout Pang, you're gonna hear a lot of ambience and atmosphere that provides a kind of unsettling, but also very natural feeling for Pang. I feel that this album provides a lot of stinging synthesizers, some guitars for extra ambience, or even some bright 80s melodies in places that does infuse the guitar and other instruments. I love that she's able to go both retro, but also feels futuristic on some of the others, including the closing moment Parachute. She worked with A.G. Cook on a few of the cuts. You might know them from PC Music, but also this record just feels fascinating on a myriad of different levels. For the essential tracks, I'm going to have to start by pointing your attention to So Hot You're Hurting My Feelings. This is a dance your ass off song made for summer nights, so definitely keep this in rotation. It feels very 80s, but also very Caroline Polachek, and so does Caroline Shut Up, the next essential here. That's one that definitely sees her getting a bit in her head, but I love the way that it plays out. Also, Hey Big Eyes feels very dreamy, a nice aesthetic going on there that just continues to build and build. Also, Hit Me Where It Hurts is extremely catchy and fun, and the closing moment, Parachute, is experimental. I love that she goes out on a limb with that closer, but it totally sticks the landing if you ask me, and I'm so excited that her debut album, well, her first under her actual name, was great.
Now it's your right, 'cause every dog has got its day. We're here to fight, resist in every way.
Breaking the ice on our top 10, we have the Canadian band Sum 41 with their excellent release, Order in Decline. Sum 41 dropped the best album of their career in a metal-tinged blowout that took shots at the US president and looked inwards for some reflective ballads that pushed the boundaries of what this album could unleash. Their frontman Derek definitely feels like he's back in the driver's seat full throttle on this release. Not to knock 13 Voices, because that was a really solid album, I just didn't get as much from it as I would have hoped to, but this is a heavy, well played, with some great riffs type of album that you can sink your teeth into over and over again. I also really like their new drummer Frank. I mean, I definitely miss Steve-O, but also at the same time, Frank's killing it back there and deserves some credit. Cooling down and moving into the essential tracks, A Death in the Family is one that you have to hear. If you don't hear anything else from this album, make it that one at the very least. Their guitarist Brown sound is incredible on this track, and I love the energy that it has. Never There changes lanes completely. That's a great driving ballad that I absolutely love. It kind of floored me in a way with how pretty it was. And also Out for Blood, a vicious single that really grew on me. I still continue to spin this track. The People Versus is a punk rager that reminds me of The Offspring that I highly recommend. And also Turning Away, the opening track that really sets things in motion to make this record fantastic. You've gotta love it when a record just sneaks up on you and then turns your perception around because you didn't see it coming. It's like a freight train running you over, and there you are, just in the headlights. You didn't know what to do, so you lay down on the tracks, and then it comes pulsating over you, and you're like, this is incredible. And with post-punk being one of my favorite genres, I would say, especially the post-punk revival movement that included the likes of Interpol, The Killers, and many more in the early 2000s, I'm definitely a fan of the genre. Well, this is a post-punk album here at number 9. It's the Twilight Sad, hailing from Scotland. It won't be like this all the time. Grief is channeled into possessing dark tangents of post-punk and maddening fury that never spills over too far. It Won't Be Like This All the Time is definitely going to remind some fans of Ian Curtis of Joy Division fame, of course. There's several bands out there right now that people are comparing to Ian, and I don't feel that that's entirely fair. I feel that the Twilight Sad, as I've gone back and checked out some of their other records in the discography, I feel that for the most part, outside of maybe their debut, they've just continuously gotten better and better. And this one laments grief and a lot of other things. It also gives some hopefulness. There's some great one-liners in here that I really connected with. There's simplistic lyrics in places, but the music feels anything but that. It's well layered, so many well-timed, perfectly timed, dare I say, synth hits, the guitars that drive the mood of these songs up so high. I love the vocals. You definitely feel the fear and the hurt in them, but also it's just something with that driving drum presence, also the bass that propels so many of these cuts. It is a force to be reckoned with. As far as the essential tracks go, I have to call out VTR first. That was one of the singles, but that build up, the hook will drive itself inside of your head. Aug/Machine, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is another one that feels devastating on some level, and I love the instrumentation. It really is putting itself all over the place. Girl Chewing Gum is a major staple near the end of this thing. I'm Not Here, Missing Face is one that made me fall in love with the record, and I think it'll help you guys as well. And I leave it with Videograms, which again was another single, but it's also the closing moment here that does kind of offer a ray of light after this very melancholic, reflective post-punk LP.
Only child, one of these days, someone's gonna come around and try to make you change.
Number 8, The Raconteurs Help a Stranger. Jack White and the boys resurrected the ghost of an old friend we thought was long gone, never to be seen again. Instead of feeling like a dusty old coffin that probably should have never been unearthed, the Raconteurs seemed as if someone had been keeping them all well-oiled separately, sure, but also as a band as they delivered some keenly executed rock and roll with their signature touches of the blues on Help a Stranger. On one stop, they're pulling out the ballads, on the others, they're pulling out the blistering guitars. So this is a well-layered, richly harmonized LP that I did expect to like, but not necessarily love like this, but it's something that you can just kind of kick back to and listen to again and again. Major essentials for me, of course, include Sunday Driver, a bluesy rock and roller that just refuses to back down. Thoughts and Prayers is the closing moment that experiments a bit with folk and breaks in some extra instruments that I won't even spoil if you haven't heard it. Also, Don't Bother Me. I love the shouting, twisting vocals that just continue to repeat and build on that cut. Bored and Raised, Only Child. That's one that feels very reflective. I love that track to death. And also, What's Yours Is Mine. Alright everyone, let's play a quick game of Never Have I Ever. We got 3 up. Now, never have I ever been so wrong about what I thought a record was going to be, and then I heard the album and then completely changed my mind. But hey, we couldn't help it because the singles were so misleading. Ah, damn it, I had to put down a single, and you know you did too! Blame It On My Youth had us all vomiting in our mouths just a bit, probably, and the follow-up singles ranked from solid to meh, so it makes sense that those factors, along with everything else wrong the band seemed to be doing, that would give us a good reason to panic. To me, this is what Blink-182 should sound like in 2019. It's certainly pop-punk, but more polished in a lot of ways. They certainly worked with John Feldman again, which isn't always the best idea, in my humblest of opinions, but they did work with other people like Tim Pagnotta, and it worked out quite well. The essential tracks on this LP include Black Rain, that's a great one that again includes Matt Skiba a little bit more, and also No Heart to Speak Of. Banger alert, Skiba gets those yells going, the fire is started. I also highly recommend Heaven. That is one where Mark Hoppus really shines and stands out. That hook is undeniable. Pin the Grenade is super fun, feeling like some classic Blink, especially on the bridge and that bass breakdown. Remember to Forget Me is the final one that I'm gonna highlight. That is an emotional closer that certainly hits with a different atmosphere, a little bit more programmed drums at first, but hang in there because it gets even better.
So wake me up and keep me strong. Put my bones where they belong. Oh, happy days are here again, but I've spent them all in bed in terror.
Ring the bell, they've done it again. Bayside landed number 6 with their record Interrobang, which, might I add, I love that title. Being somebody who appreciates grammar, maybe from a distance at times, I love that title. If you don't know what it means, then use the dictionary. Bayside pounded out a glaring and confrontational 10-track record as the Rockers struck gold once again on Interrobang. This is something that saw so much great guitar work. I saw a lot of new chemistry within the band, and it seems like they've doubled down on some of the things that made them great in the first place. Not that they've ever released a bad album, it's just kind of insane to me that they're still pumping out such high quality content at this point. I also have to add, watch out because the feels might sneak up on you on this one. I mean, I'm hearing a lot of that in some of the lyrics on tracks like Tall. It really spoke to me, not only because I'm a monster at 6'6", but also just because it spoke to the year that I think a lot of us had. We're all struggling out there in different ways, and this record confronts that. And also tracks like Numb, Bury Me, Prayers, those are among my essentials, and of course the title track Interrobang, Tall, White Flag, Heaven. There's a lot that you need to hear on Interrobang.
There's a glitch in the stream, but we just fill the between. There's a fault in the system, so much talk but no listen.
Sad, mellow, gorgeous, and spacey, the number 5 position goes to Don't Feed the Pop Monster, an effort by Broods, a New Zealand-based music duo that I can't really put a genre tag on specifically. Alternative, indie, a little bit of indie pop I suppose as well. This though, I believe is truly their best effort to date. You want catchy hooks? You got them. You want the feeling of staring at your coffee mug in the morning not knowing how to get your day started? Well, you got that too. This is kind of an ultimatum of emotions. You're on the cusp of making some decisions, but it also feels freeing in some ways. You've got the catchy singles like Peach and Everything Goes, and then on the other side of the fence, you've got something like Every Time You Go, and then you just kind of break down the walls, the barriers in between these two different styles, and they're kind of fused together in the perfect little dome, this little atmosphere that you could live in with Broods. Essential tracks from Don't Feed the Pop Monster include Dust, that one will sweep you off your feet. Falling Apart will remind you of the adult contemporary scene of the 2000s, but in a good way. Hospitalized is actually really funny and I love the moving synths on that one. Everything Goes Wow is a poppin' single. Too Proud really gets Caleb in the spotlight on the vocals for once. And it just kind of pulls the rug out from under you. It's very emotional, hard to listen to at times. And then rounding it out, we have Every Time You Go, which just builds and builds. And you realize that a lot of these tracks do that, and Don't Feed the Pop Monster is an amazing experience.
We used to ride round all reckless, stolen pets, that's Jillian Vespers. And the feds got my broski restless, said he got a charge on a car, no Tesla.
I do not cover a ton of rapper hip-hop on my channel, that is a fact, but I also know what my viewers are generally interested in, and unfortunately that's not always it, but that does not mean that I'm not listening and that I don't have things that I want to pass on to you. And at number 4, we have the British rapper Dave with his Mercury Prize winning for Album of the Year album, Psychodrama. Dave's style of rapping is so understated but pointed and sharp. Every word is focused and hits the way he wanted it to land. He rides over some production that feels very sleek. It has some keen insight as to what it wants to do. It has these skittering beats, but also some raw, dark piano that pops up, giving a lot of ambience. Dave is so multi-talented, he can do a lot of things. Watch the NPR Tiny Desk concert, because that was another thing that just continued to win me over to his style. The wordplay is unreal. Honestly, one of the best rappers that I have seen this decade by a country mile. He's so young, he's just 21 years old, but his political commentary, his insight, his way of telling a story. Listen to Leslie, it's 11 minutes long, but that is an epic. That is a journey. That is a tale, and that is something that you can just get invested in. It doesn't even feel like it's 11 minutes because of how good Dave is at doing what he does. Psychodrama really spoke to me. It tapped a nerve, and it made me pay attention. Moving into the essential tracks, I have to praise Black. That is one where Dave gave his perspective about growing up in the London area, being black, what it means to him, his message, his journey, his story. Also, of course, featuring Ruel, we've got the track Leslie, which is just a journey that I don't want to spoil anything for you if you've never heard this track. Screwface Capital is a banger. Love the pop and instrumental on that one and some of the clever insight that he gives lyrically. Streetham, however you say it. I know that I'm not British and I just made myself look foolish, but I love that track as well. Another one of the best ones on the LP. And finally, Location featuring Burna Boy. You hear that, Fall Out Boy? This is where you put a Burna Boy feature. Underestimating a band's prowess is high-key embarrassing, but I did that to Microwave, and I don't know why. But at number 3, we have the album Death is a Warm Blanket by them, so that should tell you I was wrong! Don't you dare judge that book by its cover, and while I didn't fully grasp the whole idea of Microwave being heavier like this just based on the title track single that they initially put out, listening to it in the context of this album, it makes so much more sense. It's so clear that Microwave assembled a record, a full-length album that's like 30 minutes long, it's super compact, but it goes down anything but smooth. I mean, this is a harsh, thrashing, pummeling listen at times, but they also do such a good job at throttling on the gas pedal and then just letting off and coasting for a little bit. You think everything's kind of silent and ambient and chill, oh, we're just hanging out, and then boom, you get sucker punched with a guitar. This is the Daisy by Brand New of their discography. What Daisy was to Brand New, I think Death is a Warm Blanket is to Microwave. I think that Death is a Warm Blanket is a menacing listen. There's so many meaty riffs, like on Float to the Top. I mean, that looks like it's going to beat me up. It's a bully that's taking my lunch money and throwing me in the locker, yet you're still somehow not mad at the dude that just did it to you afterwards. Essentials, of course, include Float to the Top, because I praised that song enough already, so we'll keep it at that. Hate TKO, which apparently was the singer's favorite song on the LP. Mirrors, which was another fantastic single. It's very catchy. It's more reminiscent of their Much Love album, if you really dug that. That was one of my favorite releases of 2016. Leather Daddy is hilarious. I love that it's so slow to start, and then it just starts screaming and wailing on the track. And finally, I'll round it out with Carrie and Part of It. Part of it being a fascinating look in the mirror, if you will, that kind of recaps the entire journey that this album went on. Fangs. That's what this album feels like it rips through you with. Fangs. At number 2, we have Slipknot with We Are Not Your Kind, their first record since 2014's Point 5, The Great Chapter. Corey Taylor is out of control and on a warpath on album 6 from the ILuvMetal band, barreling over anyone in his way with a steamroller on what is arguably one of their most compelling and complete records to date. I've gotta hand it to the band for forcing the naysayers of this group, for all of the band drama that was swirling around so many rumors about Slipknot. They just kinda stuck it to the man, stuck their middle fingers in the air casually, and walked away with this landmine going off. We Are Not Your Kind is an accomplishment. There's aggression constantly, but there's also experimentation, there's nuance, and there is a good reason why so many people are saying that this is their best album they've ever made. This is an intimidating, heavy listen that calls back to some of their heaviest moments in their discography, but also new stuff like Spiders, which moving into the essential tracks, that is one of those. Also, Solway Firth, of course, closing out this record, one of the best songs of the year, hands down. Unsainted, an amazing single. I also have to highlight Nero Forte. That is a fan favorite for good reason. It just slams through anything in its path. I think Orphan also does that. The lyrical content there, Corey Taylor is raging mad. And also, I have to praise A Liar's Funeral, because along with Spiders, these are some of the key elements of the record that really make it work. It stands out in such a different way for Slipknot, but it solidifies their presence going into the future. What's it gonna be, John? What's your album of the year? When will we let the number one beast out of its cage? Well, right after we roll the honorable mentions, records that were just outside of my top 20. There's a dozen of them, and there could be even more, because again, this was a great year, and I'm sorry I don't get to talk about them in detail. Alright neighbors, I hope you've buckled up because it's time for my number one pick, so without further ado, here we go, the album of the year for 2019. Holy maple syrup, Batman! These Canadian punks just detonated the live wire! Good thing they made such a potentially irresponsible decision, because without that, we might not have my album of the year for 2019, Morbid Stuff by the punk rock band Pup. Fuck yes! That is really all I can say to myself when I sit down to listen to this masterpiece from front to back, whether it be the hammering drums on some of these cuts, the nuanced guitars, those dancing leads that are going throughout the background of some of these cuts like Bare Hands, and even the title track Morbid Stuff. This is so fun to listen to. Those gang vocals, dude! I mean, I can't get over those gang vocals. I mean, at times those can be very, very cheesy, but Pup, they always make it work. They excel there. I love their frontman Stephen Babcock. He's so talented at writing a sneering jab and then turning the insults back on himself or anyone else around him that cares to share in the misery. Honestly, with as much as I loved The Dream Is Over in 2016, they outdid themselves here. They put the bar out of reach to this untouchable level that I don't know if they'll ever be able to pass, but I sure hope they continue trying. Every single second feels vital and engaging, vivid but refreshing, angry but focused. Pup never let up on this release, and I'm so happy that they did what they did. They're just such a fun band, not only to see perform live, in the studio, wherever you're catching them, just spinning this record over and over again. Essential tracks. All right, can we throw up the entire track list there? Oh, we can't do that. All right, well, I guess I'll try and break it down so you guys have an idea of what to check out first. Hopefully you'll check out the full-length record. See You at Your Funeral is indeed one of those. It was one of my top 5 best tracks of the year. It's so sarcastic, it really leaves a sting with you. Also, Kids is another one that drives its hook into you, never lets go. I love Bare Hands, that dancing guitar, the driving bass on that one. Just a ton of fun. Put some pep in your step there. Scorpion Hill showed their diversity, willingness to branch out just a bit, and is definitely a key track. Bloody Mary Kate and Ashley is again an electrifying stomp of thunder from above. And then Morbid Stuff, the opening track, but in a way also a closing thought, because Morbid Stuff is the album of the year for me, John from ARTV. Thanks so much for sticking around. If you happen to still be here, then drop a like on the video and help me get this to 3,000 likes. Subscribe for the love of music if you happen to be new to my channel, and I would love to know your favorites of the year. What did you think of my list? What's your own top 10, top 5, top 20, whatever you want to leave? Let's get the discussion going in the comments section down below. I think this was definitely a very good year for music, and I'm excited to see what 2020 and the rest of the decade to come has to hold. Consider supporting the channel on Patreon at the top link in the description down below, or else this annotation in the corner of your screen. If you want to see some more year-end content, then tap this playlist card right over here, or tap here for my favorite albums of 2018. All of my socials can be found in the description, most active on Instagram at ARTVJohn, and I will see you soon for more right here on ARTV.